I'm John Kaiser in Vancouver, November 13th, 2021, at the Metals Investor Forum. I'm speaking with Robert Boyd, CEO of Endurance Gold. Robert, welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you, John, and I look forward to your questions. I'll see what I can do.
Robert, I remember the Reliance project from the 80s when I was working in the brokerage industry. It was one of my bottom fish picks, a little junior called Manika. It pulled a hot hole. Stock went to over $5. And then they drilled, and the whole story just sort of fizzled. Now, 20 plus 30 years later, you've picked it up. What went wrong with this project before that it didn't turn into a major discovery back then? And what are you doing differently that makes you so enthusiastic about the Reliance project?
Well, that's a good question, John, because it was explored by a gentleman in Manika, Charlie Boitard, to give him credit. But Charlie was an eccentric to some degree, and he located drill holes through a dowsing methodology, and I actually visited and listened to his pitch back in the late 80s when I was working for Homestake Mining Company. And, to give him credit, his dowsing did result in him making a gold discovery. And he made that gold discovery in about 1986 with a very exciting drill hole on the Imperial Zone. And then about 80% of the drilling he did over the next 20 years was in the period between that discovery hole in 1988, about 80% of the footage that was drilled, and it was primarily drilled on that Imperial Zone. He just continued to re-drill that zone over about 100 meters of strike. But the first thing you see when you go on the property is it's a very strong alteration system. Good widths of iron carbonate alteration. The strike length shows real great potential, and it's sitting in a continental collision area. So the potential is that this system could be much larger, and that systematic work wasn't done. And so what we did in our exploration activities is to take on and build on the base of some good work on the Imperial, but recognizing that in order to turn this into a multi-million ounce discovery, if that's an ultimate objective for us, you've really got to explore along this length of this system, do systematic work starting with a soil sample survey, which has never been done, as I mentioned in my presentation, and do the basic geological and geophysical work to help you put the foundation together to explore this. And these orogenic gold systems can be complicated structurally, and you need to do the work to really understand them, do the scientific studies and alteration, but structural data and other things like that to really unravel the system. And we're just at the early days of that, trying to unravel the system and understand the structural regimes, and I don't think that's something that Charlie really made any effort to try and focus on in the historic work.
You did a pretty good overview of the Reliance project during the presentation. You have 22 core holes pending for assays. Is there any one hole in particular that you are holding your breath for? And if it comes in good, what does it mean?
Well, as you can see on our longitudinal, we pointed out the fact that we're working to open up the system along trend, and we're very excited about the stuff that we opened up in terms of the southeastern extension and the extensions of the Eagle Zone. And we highlighted in our last press release, we highlighted one hole in particular, hole number 20, where we showed photos of that core and the fact that there's a zone in there that carries arsenopyrite and stibnite over a pretty interesting interval. So we're very hopeful for that hole, but I also highlighted in previous press releases holes like hole number 6 down a little further down the hill in the Eagle Zone, and then hole number 9 in the Imperial Zone. Those are, and I mentioned those in my presentation, showing that those are pretty key holes. However, our general feeling is of the 22 holes, I think we've already provided the guidance that we feel the majority of those holes are likely to carry gold values, and that probably maybe 20 to 25% of them could have pretty extraordinary or encouraging drill intersections that would indicate a good gold potential in that system. And that's good, right? In an orogenic gold system, if you have a hit ratio of 1 in 4, that can be very encouraging. And right now our hit ratio is much higher than that, 41 out of 51 of our RC holes.
So Plan A is the high-grade Reliance project in southwestern British Columbia, but you also have the Elephant Mountain project in Alaska. You've spent $1 million on it in the past. How and why do you own that project, and what needs to be done next for it, and what do you see as the potential for it?
Well, I like central Alaska. I mean, it's just like central the Yukon. It's a fantastic belt, this Tintina gold belt. It's got potential for multi-million ounce gold discoveries. So I was poking around looking for opportunities and got to meet a geologist that lives in Alaska, and he'd staked these claims that had been previously worked in the early 1990s by Placer Dome, and they drilled some holes and got a good soil anomaly that suggested a really largely untested intrusive hosted gold system. So we went back into that property, just like we do with all of ours, and did some systematic exploration on that property, including drilling a hole that returned 147 meters of 0.4 grams per ton with a higher grade core of 0.6 grams per ton. And that's right in the ballpark of these intrusive hosted gold systems like Victoria Gold's project, Kinross's Fort Knox deposit, and many others that have potential to generate good systems. This project I said, if I'm going to go into Alaska and look at things, I'm going to stay on the road. This project's 5 kilometers off an all-weather highway. It's really well located. And if you're going to look for bulk mineable, low-grade systems, you want to have that infrastructure.
Back in 2010-11, you acquired a project called Bandito in southeastern Yukon. Your website has a ton of detailed information about it as a rare earth project, and I looked at it and realized, wow, this is a huge multi-billion ton cyanide, peralkaline cyanide intrusion, and you have very high total rare earth grades and very high heavy rare earth enrichment. And finding a world-class heavy rare earth dominated deposit, that is right now the holy grail, because even China itself is running out of heavy rare earths from its ion absorption clay deposits. Why did you acquire that project, and in what way is it similar and different from the Strange Lake complex in Labrador, Quebec?
Okay, well, I'll start by how did I acquire it? Well, I became aware of it through another company I was involved with. Had this project that was sitting on being not explored, but they had a copper, nickel, and some rare earth occurrences from historic work on it. And I said, oh, this might be an IOCG system. So we went in and looked at it and did a little bit of orientation soil work and realized that, this orientation soil work pointed to a potential large soil anomaly actually in the intrusive, whereas all the historic prospects were out in phenites and sericite pyrite alteration features that were associated with the base metal mineralization. I think we ruled out pretty quickly that this was probably not an IOCG system, but then we pursued with with a couple of years of soil sampling to help define the edge of the system. So it's really not, we're at a project that's a pre-discovery stage. We've defined a very large geochem anomaly that still remains open. It's a 6 by 4 kilometer intrusive complex that's got alteration suggesting that there was probably a cumulate type rare earth accumulation in that system, but it could also be remobilized because we're seeing hydrothermal zircon, we're seeing changes, alteration of the magnetite to specular hematite. That's why it's called a red cyanite, and mobilization of other rare earth elements. And the niobium, for instance, used to be a columbite, but now it's a ferrocolumbite because of alteration effects. So there could be real potential in this based on some of the grab samples of remobilized systems that are quite high grade. And despite this being a very large system, there could be potential for higher grade cores in there. And what we want to do is really get in, and our funding focus right now is obviously on the Reliance project. But that's the kind of project that really, to bring it to the next stage, it needs systematic soil sampling, some airborne radiometrics, and some other surveys like that, LIDAR survey, to help with the understanding the zoning in that intrusive. So we see it as an opportunity, as a possible spin out or divestment for shares to a company so we can see some value added to that project going forward. But our focus as a gold company continues to be the Reliance project and secondary the Elephant Mountain, if the opportunities arise from the funding perspective. And but the Bandito rare earth is a fantastic opportunity. And as far as Strange Lake is concerned, I find it hard to make the comparisons because we really don't have the data like exists at Strange Lake, but it is a very large system, just like Strange Lake, and offers discovery potential in a well-located area in the southeastern Yukon, next to oil and gas production in the Liard gas basin. There's 90 kilometers away from producing gas wells right now. Road access, all-weather road access about 60 kilometers away, and tote roads that did for oil and gas exploration about 30 kilometers away. So it's a great-looking project and much better located than Strange Lake.
So that's interesting. It's only a coincidence that you looked at this during that rare earth boom, and the rare earth potential only emerged as a byproduct of you doing, standard exploration, pursuing a different model. And then, of course, the rare earth bubble collapsed, and you have not revisited. Well, I hope that you find the money next summer to go in there and do the prep work to set it up for a spin out and a serious drill program, because I think this is a monster waiting to be discovered. Thank you, Robert. We have been in Vancouver at the Metals Investor Forum.
Thank you, John.